All right. So let me share my screen. We'll go over the agenda really quick. It is a short agenda, and with Article 3 being really just Midco School of Technology, there isn't much to talk about, but there is a whole lot to talk about in special ed. And we purposely delayed this meeting so Janet could join today. She does have a presentation to go over. So what I asked Janet to review with everybody on this call today was just a high-level overview of what we've accomplished this year for special ed and any impactful changes for FY24. So I'm going to hand the baton off to Janet, and then we can get into the spreadsheet and talk about some numbers. So
I think I can share my screen as soon as yours is off. There we go.
I'm off.
All right. So I have a lovely slideshow, which I have to move things around so I can see all of your faces. All right. So can you now just see the slides?
Yep.
So a couple of things about this is, so my goal for this is to give you context. So when we're talking about the budget, you have an idea of what our special ed department kind of looks like in this district. I will talk about some things that I'm requesting, but I will also talk about how I'm planning to offset those requests. So, and that's at the very end. I can do this presentation in under 10 minutes. I can do it in 5 if I speak really fast, but I'm assuming you'll have questions. So please just feel free to ask those. And the important thing I would say is that if you have a question, speak up and just unmute yourself, because I cannot see everybody on my screen right now.
Okay.
I'm good. All right. So just to start, if I can get my computer to work. Yes, there we go. So I just want to start by giving you some numbers from last year so you have some context. So last year when we had our October 1st child count, we had 322 students receiving services. You can see that the number of students who transferred in and out of district was very similar. So we had approximately the same number of students transfer in as transferred out. Our students who were referred to special education was around 60. We did have 26 students graduate, 8 out of district placements. And then the last two numbers are just the number of meetings we had to give you the idea of IEPs we're having every year, and the number of written notices, which are notices we send out to parents for last year.
Janet, why are there 3?
Going back.
Okay.
Going back. There you go.
Well, 322 students receiving special, but 1,019 IEPs. Like, you have several IEP meetings for one student? Or?
Yes. For some students, we might have one every 20 days.
Okay.
So those are IEP meetings. It doesn't mean they're annual IEPs. It could be program reviews. It could be meetings to discuss absences, meetings to discuss changes in placement, or anything that adjusts the IEP. We would have to have a meeting for.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Janet, would you just clarify for me out of district placements? What does that mean exactly?
That means students that go to special purpose private schools or residential placements, but there's a slide later on where I'm going to break that down for you.
And then one other thing, the 42 students that are transferred into the district, is that number, is that stay consistent over the last few years, or is that up or down, or where does that compare to previous?
It changes every year, but what you're going to notice, and I'll flip to the next screen, you'll notice that like this year we're slightly less than what we were for all of year, but you can see that it's not like we have 60 in one and 50 in other. They usually come out pretty close, so that we usually have approximately the same number of students that transfer in as transfer out every year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we have a very transient population. So this year at the October 1st child count, and that data, so it should be 2022, 356 students. So that number was up for sure. I will say that special ed changes quickly. This time last year, we had 348 students in special ed. Right now, we have 348 students in special ed. So the numbers change. And we've been staying relatively flat, although we have spikes in the population. Currently, we have 57 students that have been referred. I got 3 more today. So we are at the same number we had for all of last year. So our referrals are up. We have less students projected to graduate. We have 5 students in out-of-district placements, so we brought some students back. Additionally, we have 3 students that are in residential placements, 2 students who are wait listed, so they're waiting for a placement. And again, we brought some students back, so we brought 2 students back and 1 at the end of last year. And then we added this, right now we've had 13 students that have had tutoring at some point during the year. That's something we're seeing an increase in. We're seeing an increase in the number of students who need tutoring at some point during the school year. And that's just our IEPs so far. So I think we'll probably break even. We'll probably get to approximately where we were last year. So any questions about those numbers? Much of this I'll revisit at some other point. This slide I just put in every year. I just love it. It's really nice. I think Jess Yates also put it in there. It just kind of gives you an idea of what the special ed continuum looks like. So we have some students that are general ed students are 100% in the, I would say, in classroom with non-disabled peers. And then as you move down, you might have some students that have speech services only. Those students would be, going down the continuum. 80%, 40 to 79% might be resource room students who require maybe some pull-out services and reading, writing, math, or executive functioning skills. And when you get under 40% with non-disabled peers, those are generally our more intensive programs, like our self-contained behavior programs and our life skills programs. And then 0% would be our out-of-district placement students or our homebound hospital students. So again, out-of-district placement are students who are attending other schools specifically designed to deal with their needs. Homebound hospital is any student that is hospitalized, regardless of whether that student has an IEP. So if a general ed student is hospitalized and needs to receive an education during that point, we are responsible why they are hospitalized, and that comes out of special ed.
Janet, where do our kids with autism go, and what is the diagnostic sort of cutoff within the spectrum for whether or not they're, in the classroom some percentage?
So that's a
Or
great
not.
question. And the answer is a great special ed answer, which is it depends. So we
Yeah.
might have students with autism who are in our NEC program, which is our New England Center for Children program, which is a self-contained program for students with significant needs who are on the spectrum. And we could have some students with autism that are in the resource room and receiving services through the resource room. And we have some students with autism who might only have speech language services. And we have some students with autism who receive no special education services whatsoever, but might have a 504 because they don't require any services. So because that is such a wide spectrum, it really depends on the student. And when we're having those meetings, we're really looking at what that individual student needs.
How do we determine that? Like, again, because it is such a spectrum.
So evaluations that are done by either, when we had school psychologists, our school psychologists in the district, but through outside evaluators and school psychologists to give the team information. And then the team also pulls in information from teachers and classrooms. We do observations.
Okay, good.
Parents. So it's not just one location that comes from. We pull in as much information, and we make sure that we have people on that team that can kind of speak to different aspects to make the best.
Okay, good.
Because we're always looking for the least restrictive environment for students.
Right.
And so we need a lot of people to make sure we're doing that.
If a child has, like, I'll just say the term full autism, are they in life skills?
Not necessarily. See, this is so we might have some students with autism, again, who are in the New England Center for Children, New England Center for Children. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Program, because they really need a very specific kind of learning,
Yep.
maybe nonverbal, maybe they have significant behaviors because they have some communication needs, and they may end up in the New England Center for Children program. But we may have some students that are in the life skills program. And then we have some students with autism that may be in the one of our behavior programs. It really depends, because there's so many ways that autism can kind of impact a student's ability to benefit from their education.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So just because a student has a specific disability category, that does not tell us where their placement is. The team pulls together, which includes the families, to really look at that individual and determine where they need to go.
All right, thank you. Good.
I don't know if that was helpful at all.
Yeah, definitely helpful. Thank you.
Janet?
I appreciate it.
Go ahead.
Janet, this is Sarah. You said you had like 11 referrals right now. Are those mainly referrals at the lower grades, since there's not a high school therapist or counselor available, or how are we dealing with referrals at the high school level?
We get referrals at every level. Generally speaking, so when we get referrals, those referrals can come from many different places. Generally, best practice is that we would have a team at a building, identify that the student is struggling. Maybe they have a risk team. They call the teams different things. They come together. They sit down, they look at the individual student, they'll try some general ed interventions, see how the student does with those, and then they'll write up a referral if they feel like the student may have a disability, require special education services. That generally you don't need to have a guidance counselor to that. A classroom teacher can do that. So we have referrals. We've had 60 this year. I just received another 3. Most of them are at the elementary level, but every now and then we'll have a student at the middle school or high school level. I would say many of those are disabilities that manifest later and during adolescence. But we have a child find obligations. That's a process that takes place in every building.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Most of the ones I've received over the last few days have been elementary, which is what you like to see. We like to have early interventions. All right. So now this is going to be a lot of numbers, but again, I think it helps and gives some context. So this is just our year, what our numbers look like as of the October 1st child count. I've broken it down and I'm sharing this as soon as this meeting is over. I'm going to share these slides with everybody who's here today. So I've broken it down by disability category, the number of students in each disability category, and then the percent by district. Total for our district, our population of special education students makes up about 22.5% of our population. So a question that I got last year, which was a really good question, so I wanted to make sure I shared that information this year, and I put it on a slide so you have access to it, is how do we compare to the state? So if you look at the state numbers at the top left, you can see that in terms of their percentages, first of all, it's been increasing. And also, I just want to point out the Maine is high in the nation. But the state in 2021 was at 19.41%. And so we're higher than the state.
And I will just mention that that is consistent with the budgetary allocation for FY25. Article 2 is coming in at 22.7% of the overall general fund budget.
Okay. And then again, if you look at, if you break it down by disability category, again, we're very close. I think one number that you'll notice that's higher than the state average is emotional disturbance. And I think that is something we have a lot of community conversation around right now as well. So again, I'll make sure I share this with you so you can refer back to these numbers. I can also get
We
you
are
more-
above state average when it comes to emotional disturbance.
Yes.
By a lot or a little?
We're, I think, at 11% and they're at 7%. So it's not 0.9. But I think that is
Anybody
trending.
have any theories on that?
And this is
any
2021 data, by the way.
21. Okay. Yeah, I just don't know if anybody from DOE has any theories, because people have analyzed it maybe at DOE about what's going on.
I will say that anxiety is often one of those categories that will go under emotional disturbance. So I think
Yeah, sure.
we've seen a definite increase in that across the board.
Any chance that we've seen more, or we've been better at identifying more?
It could be a combination of both.
Okay.
Oh, and I would just also like to point out that another way that students can be referred is through parent referrals. But again, generally we want to, if at all possible, go through the school route, because we want the school to be pulling that data so we can make a good decision about whether a student is eligible. But parents can also refer, and we act on that immediately. All right, so I'm not going to go over this slide too much because I'm going to go over it into greater detail. But this again is a resource for you and just breaks down which program we have in each building. I'm going to be going over percents by building. And so I think it's important to note that some of our buildings have more intensive programs. So for example, if Thomaston Grammar School is the only elementary school with a life skills program, any student requiring a life skills program anywhere in the district at the elementary level would go to Thomaston Grammar School. So that will impact their percentage. So again, this is just a resource, but I'll go into it in a little more detail. All right, so now this is something else I think is a little helpful as we're looking at the numbers. Just I'm going to go through by school so you can see where our staff are, where our students are. Ash Point, their percent right now is at 14.9. So 14.9% of their students are receiving some form of special education services. It may just be speech only or resource room. Their numbers have gone down. So they were at 18.8% last year. So that's So the numbers at Ash Point have gone down, and they currently have one special education teacher, 2.5 ed techs. The other 0.5 is general ed. And then they have speech, OT, PT, and social work as assigned based on student needs. And at any point, if you have a question about a specific school, just stop me.
Is the trend in Ash Point been going down annually, or this was a one-time went down?
I do think that it went down the year before, but I think you're going to notice that it changes. There's a little fluctuation every year.
Yeah.
And I would also like to add that these numbers are pulled from Power School, and unlike the last numbers I gave you, I did had my office coordinator help me do this yesterday and just made sure we had all these numbers up to date as of yesterday. Okay, so you're seeing current numbers. Cushing Community School, their number has gone up. They were 16.4% last year, so they have seen a significant increase in students who require some form of special education services. They've also seen an increase of students with significant behaviors at Cushing Community School. Again, if it raises to the level that a student needs a more intensive support program, South School and TGS are where those programs are, but they have seen an increase. They have 0.5 special education teachers. They have 2 ed techs. We did increase that number by 1 this year due to need. And then speech, OT, PT, and social work as assigned. And the way that we increased the ed tech is we just transferred somebody from another building. So we didn't add a position. We just moved a position to that location because that's where the need was.
27%. Wow.
Yep. So, and keep in mind that state average. It may get a little worse before it gets better, but it will get better as we go through the schools. Okay, so Thomaston Grammar School is at 28.9%. And their numbers last year were 23.5%. We've seen an increase in the number of students with significant needs in life skills and the behavior program in that building. And again, this is the only building that has a life skills program. And it's one of only 2 elementary schools that has a behavior program. So that I think will account for some of that increase as well. So they have 3 special education teachers, a case manager. They have 14 ed tech positions. 2 of them are open, and 1 is in the life skills and 1 is in that self-contained behavior program. So they are needed positions, and it is causing stress on those programs because they're short-handed consistently. They also have a 1-to-1 nurse, and then they have speech, OT, PT, and social work as assigned.
Janet, I'm going to ask you a question because I don't want to add any work to your life. But can you, in a few keystrokes, show diagnostically what's going on in each school? Like, exactly, diagnoses. We have 3 kids with this diagnosis and 7 kids with this diagnosis. I mean, the actual, DSM diagnoses.
I'm going to say that I'm not going to ask her to do that because I think that with our little small schools, that's too fine a grain size.
No, I didn't mean that Janet would do that. I mean, like, is there something like in a program you can hit a couple of keys and you get it? That's what I mean.
There isn't, but I have that data. I look at that on a regular basis to see where the need is. So it's something that I keep track of, but there's no easy way to access that anywhere.
Yeah. Well, if it ever is easy, let me know because I'd like to watch
I have
that.
I have the numbers, so I can share like current numbers with you. I can send that to John at probably shortly after this meeting.
Again, don't want to add more work to your life. Just if it's easy, then it'd be great to see, but otherwise, no.
Yeah, Power School doesn't currently house that data on our special ed population. And we don't have any sort of ancillary EMR system that we can look up.
Yeah, okay.
Hey,
Janet, can
Janet,
I ask you?
If we did.
Janet, can you go back 1 slide to the Cushing just real quick?
Back to
I just wanna
Cushing.
see. Yeah, is it Cushing? Oh, sorry. Yeah, just wanted to see the placement profile for that. So
Yeah,
speech
Cushing
and
only has resource room and
resource
speech
room.
only. Yep. So there
So
are
since it-
students.
Since it only has a resource room,
Go ahead.
you're clumping behavior and other things into the word resource because you only have a resource room.
So if a student is at Cushing Community School, they're receiving resource room services. If they need a self-contained behavior program, or life skills, they are moved to one of the other buildings.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
And that's why their numbers may be higher. So, so again, here's Thomaston Grammar School. And again, the openings are in those more intensive, programs where we need really specialized staff. And I would say it's a more stressful place to work in general. All right, so now to South School. South School has, two self-contained behavior rooms broken up by grade level. They have the New England Center for Children program. They're at 27.2% right now, which is a reduction. They've gone down from 28% last year. So their numbers are slightly down. They have 5 special education teachers and the NEC teacher who's provided by NEC. 1 special ed case manager, 18 ed techs. And I would point out there's 4 open positions there and 3 of them are in our self-contained behavior programs. And that is incredibly difficult to be able to keep that program open and running safely right now because of those openings. And then we have speech, OT, PT, and social work as assigned in that building. And then the middle school is at 23.8%, and that's a reduction from 24.1% last year. They do have a life skills program. Last year, they did not have any students in that program. This year, they have 4. They have a behavior program. And they have a New England Center for Children program, but it's a cooperative program. So we provide the teaching for that. So they have 6.5 teachers, a case manager, 15 ed techs. The open position is in the self-contained behavior program. They have a social worker, and they have speech, OT, and PT as assigned. And then the high school is almost entire flat. So they were at 20.5 last year and they're at 20.6 this year. They had a lot of students graduate last year. So the incoming 8th grade was kind of offset by that, which was lovely. So they have two behavior programs. They have a life skills program, and obviously resource room. They don't have any speech only students. You'll see that as students get older, they tend to graduate out of speech only if they have that, as we're able to, meet those needs. They have 8.5 special ed teachers, 2 case managers. There's 15 ed tech positions, 2 unfilled. There's actually 4 unfilled, but 2 are as positions, so we're not going to fill them. And those are, 1 is in the self-contained behavior program and 1 is in life skills. And then they have a CNA ed tech, a social worker, and speech, OT, and PT as assigned. And then the last is this out of district placement, to kind of define that a little better for you, because I think that is something that may impact the budget next year, especially if they're increasing the tuition rates of all of those buildings. So of the special ed population, 1.4% of the special ed population is in an out of district placement, but it's only 0.3 of the total population of our students. We have, I would say we have, let's see the best way to explain this. So Pathways, Atlantic Academy, Pine View, those are all what we would consider special purpose private schools. We pay tuition for those schools at the rate that is likely going to be increasing shortly. Baxter School, for the deaf, we pay tuition, but we pay tuition as though we would for another district. So it's not as expensive to send students there. The residential placements are in New Hampshire and Tennessee, because those are the closest ones we could find. We do not pay tuition at those schools. The state takes care of that, but we are the districts that are responsible for their IEP paperwork, making sure their programming is appropriate, evaluating, and making sure they're getting all their services. So we're responsible for those students, even though they're in residential placements out of state. We were able to return 2 students to district this year, and we have 2 that have kind of been on a wait list, but we've been trying to meet their needs within the district while they're waiting, and hopefully we'll be able to keep them in district. Any questions about out of district placements? And one of the things we've just learned is that we may see a significant increase in that, but we're still trying to figure out exactly what that will look like.
What do you mean you've learned them? Maybe like because of CDS telling us you that?
No, we received a notification from the state that they are in the process of hiking rates for special purpose private schools. That's something that's being discussed. Yep. And then our incoming CDS profile is very similar to last year. We have approximately 8 students that look like they'll be speech only, 6 resource room, 2 that may be ISP, NEC, or life skills, which is about where we were last year. But one of the things we know that happened last year, and it looks like may happen again this year, is that once we get those students into the building, we've noticed there's a bunch of other students that weren't identified through CDS that we need to then assess for special education and see if they qualify. And I don't know if that's just CDS isn't catching them or if parents aren't going through the process to get them services through CDS.
Well, got to be a lot of parents who don't go to CDS. I mean, like a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
And don't realize it exists or what it's going to do or help or whatever.
yes, so we've seen an increase in that, I think, since the pandemic as well, so. And then again, the goals that we have as a special ed department are just to increase our district's capacity to service students with significant behaviors, increasing our retention and recruitment of staff, creating a more robust transition plan for our 9th through 12th graders, and we're actually doing transition planning in 8th grade now as well. And we're meeting our legal obligations under special ed law, and definitely increasing our capacity to complete student evaluations. We currently do not have any school psychologists. We have 2 open positions. Based on our numbers, we should have 3 school psychologists. So we've been contracting out for that. I think a lot of that has been covered by ESSER funds, but the reality is if we can hire somebody, then we don't need to contract out. So I think that that would break even. I don't think that would impact the budget at all. And then lastly, I just want to make sure this is kind of like to give you a heads up. These are the only 2 things that I'm asking for this year. I do need to have a contracted ASL interpreter. We actually have 3 students that need interpreters. I've been trying to cover them under grant money. With the increase in out-of-district placement costs and the increase in students who need interpreters, I would like to cover one in the general budget, but I'm also able to reduce one of our contracted SLPs, so that I think that cost will be covered by that. So it shouldn't be an increase in the budget if approved. And then the other one is we really need an additional occupational therapist. Our current occupational therapists are at their legal limit, which is 50 per caseload. And we know that we have incoming students next year and we have referrals currently. So we really do need an extra position there. We have a position for a BCBA, which we have not been able to fill, but we've put some systems into place that I think if we can leave that position open. And so that, again, the occupational therapist, if we get that approved, would not increase the budget. Any questions for me? I'm going to stop sharing so you can see my face. Oh, there's Paul. Hey, Paul. Mark, I can see your lips moving.
Sorry. I saw your entry about the ASL interpreter. How often is that needed? I assume at least part of your staff has some ASL in them, but I mean, is this something to conduct an entire class with, or are these for?
These are for students who are deaf. And we have
Oh,
one
of course,
student,
yeah, right.
one student that's deaf blind, and so one of the things that we're trying to do is make sure that they have an access to a language. And in order to do that, since they can't access spoken language, they have to have an interpreter with them pretty much the entire day to interpret. So they can not only teach them ASL, so they have access to language and grammar and those sort of things, but also so that they can be there in the class. So as the teacher speaking, they can be translating back and forth between the student and the teacher.
Okay, so this is for a one-on-one with the teacher. This is in an entire class.
This is for, this ASL interpreter would follow a specific student wherever they go.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
So one of those, we have one student that's deaf blind in our life skills program, and then we have 2 students that are at Sal School that need interpreters. So we have seen an increase in that. But we definitely need to provide it. And again, before the team makes a decision like that, we call in experts. So we have like ASL, people from the Baxter Governor School for the Deaf coming into those meetings, and we're consulting with people to figure out really what's best for the student. But it's really important for students to have access to language. And so for our students who are deaf, that's an important service to be able to offer.
Absolutely. I just wasn't sure the depth of that you would need them throughout the day. That you answered my question.
It's generally 6.5 hours. And then the other thing that we're trying to do, since we have seen an increase in that, is trying to figure out a way, working with that program, to see if there's a way that we can kind of consolidate some services in our district to be able to consolidate the need, and also maybe service some students, that are just hard of hearing and be able to provide services for all of those students.
Thank you.
Are you comfortable, Janet? I mean, the biggest change or increase was at Cushing. Are you comfortable with the staffing that we'll be having there next year? Or
I-
now and next year?
I am only because, if we have we have increased that by one ed tech. So when you think of it, we have two good ed techs, solid ed techs, then we have a 0.75 teacher. And even though their percent is high, their number of students is still low. So it's a percent based on, I think, 70 students. So yes, I
Yeah,
think
okay.
they're going to be okay. And if we had a
All right.
student who needed more services, and needed like a specialized program, we would move them to a school with a specialized program.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Janet, can you tell me which school you think needs the most help? Or resources?
I think the problem we're running into right now with all, I think all of our schools, but specifically TGS and South School, is being able to find qualified staff and then retaining them. So I think ed techs are just very important. And so if we don't have ed techs to staff those programs, like I said, our self-contained behavior program at South School is down 3 ed techs. So they have students with very significant behaviors, and they're running short-staffed every single day. So that adds stress to those staff members. And then obviously that impacts retention, our ability to provide services to those students, because a lot of what we're trying to do is keep everybody safe. So you need to be able to have appropriate staff to not only keep everybody safe, but also to provide the instruction the students need. So I think really our biggest struggle is getting staff and keeping them.
Yeah, and I will say, Sarah, Janet has been a tremendous partner in my first year. Talk about acronym soup. Like the vast majority of acronyms live in Article 2 in special education, and she really has her finger on the pulse. And every unfilled position that we currently have is in the FY24 budget as a placeholder. So.
Yeah. And I will say the other thing that we've been doing is just really looking at each program every year and just making sure that all of our programs have the correct number of staff, and we're using all of our staff effectively. And I think we've made a lot of gains in that, especially with teachers, but the ed techs, that's been a consistent struggle.
So overall, this article is going up by how much and what percent?
So right now, we have been able to keep it fairly flat. Right now we're at about 99% just due to some efficiencies that Janet has found, changing some contracted services into new positions that we're looking to bring on to payroll. We're at 99%. However, based off of the notification from the DOE last night about SPPS programs, which are specialized programs for out-of-district placement students, and their tuition rates going up, I'm currently at $12,000 budgeted for contingency. I'd like to bring that up to about 100K, which will bring us to about 102% year over year.
Okay.
Just
Well, the
because
99%, go ahead.
Yeah, we don't know what the impact of that notification from the DOE is going to be yet. It's sort of wait and see.
Yeah. Okay. Well, 99% is brilliant. That's fantastic. Job well done. That's incredible. Just incredible.
Janet, it's Paul here. What's the turnover rate at the moment amongst staff? Is it high? Is it trending high? Is there any trend at all?
I mean, in the last week, I have had 3, John, you correct me, I think 3 people get done in the last 2 weeks.
Is that
So,
a trend?
No, that sounds right. That's.
Yeah, so again, it's, I think compared to other school districts, we're doing about what other school districts are doing. I think don't think our school district is special in that. I think it's just really hard keeping ed techs, because what we're asking them to do in some of these self-contained programs is really intensive work. And we're working on some
Oh,
severe
yeah.
behaviors. We have kids that bite, that punch, that spit.
Wow.
And where there are, I don't want to say too, but there are other places that they know they can go in with much less stress. So keeping people has been difficult in some of those programs.
Yeah, it's
Right.
tough. It's really tough.
But the people we have are brilliant. And so I think that's one thing that if there's anything we can do, I think anything we can do to celebrate the ed techs we have in the district, because we have some very amazing, hardworking staff that are doing amazing work with our students. And I think that's one of the things that we should celebrate, is having those people with us.
Right.
Yeah, many of those positions, it's like unsung heroes because it's much harder than any one of us probably ever know to do that kind of work.
Mhm.
And maybe one of you already said this, but when will we know what the thing you're providing the contingency for from the DOE, when will we know more? Or is that, when will that be sort of settled, or is that just completely out of our hands? We have no idea when.
We're in a 14-day public comment period right now. So school districts around the state can chime in and say what financial impact that's going to have. But the DOE is really leaving it up to these SPPS programs to determine and reevaluate their tuition rates for the remainder of FY23 and for FY24. So it could have a significant impact. It could be a flat impact. We just don't know. What the DOE is trying to do is to keep the doors open for these specialized programs. And there were a number of them that notified the DOE that they were going to have to close their doors because the tuition rates just weren't covering their operational expenses. So some of that had to do with the requirement that attendance was 100% of operational days, where this population that's attending these schools have, you know, more challenges where they can't attend 100% of the days. They may only be able to attend 70% of the days based off of their specific diagnoses, but they were losing funding because of that. So they had to change the rules to allow for more flexibility on attendance rates impacting subsidy. And, you know, we're sort of just waiting for the next 14 days to see how it all shakes out.
Yes, and I will add that we have another student that we're hoping to bring back at the start of next year. So we are working really hard with those out-of-district placements to, when a student is ready to return to public school, we bring them back to public school. I think there's just a lot of uncertainty because we could have a student move into district tomorrow with an out-of-district placement, and then the school is responsible for paying that tuition.
And I will say that we have an additional 100K in a restricted fund balance for special education specifically, on top of the 100K that I'm going to put in contingency. So.
Well, one question, Janet, which is probably a completely stupid one, but can a student who is in special ed transition into the general ed population? Does that happen? Is that an objective?
It happens all the time. We've actually had quite a bit of, that's why you see the high school numbers, you see as the school students move
Yeah.
through, those percentages getting lower. So as soon as a student, every 3 years, we have to have another eligibility meeting. And we have to look at that and see if the student is still eligible for special ed services. But also in between those, that conversation is constantly being had. Does the student still require special education? Because we don't want to have a student being pulled out from services if they don't need those services. We don't want them to be with their non-disabled peers as much as possible.
Right. Well, I mean, that's a major accomplishment as well. And any trend or any sort of data that sort of demonstrates over that you're consistently delivering on that particular front, I think should also be celebrated.
Yes, and just in the last 2 weeks, we've had students who have been dismissed from services. So we have this happening on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So Janet, you would say one of your biggest challenges is keeping or attracting and retaining ed techs? Is that one of your current biggest challenges in your department?
And I know that Max and Allie have been working on on ways of increasing our marketing towards that population. I think it's just tricky to do because people who would be great ed techs aren't necessarily looking to be ed techs. So they might
Yeah.
not look at serving schools, or they might not look at Indeed under ed tech. So I think we've been talking about some job fairs, and I think that's probably a good way to go about this because there are people out there that would have no idea that's an option for them. And we could possibly get some people through that route that would be really great.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the biggest challenges district-wide, special ed or general ed or anything, Lauren. It's just the ability to attract ed techs and retain them. So
Yeah.
one of the tracks that we are attempting to sort of, formulate a pitch for is the ed tech to teacher path. For, professionals looking for a change of careers that don't know
Yeah.
that you don't need a master's of education to become a teacher, that you can actually get into the school district, start as an ed tech, and work your way into a teaching position. So, I mean, my own case, when, a couple of years ago, when I was looking for a change of careers, I wanted to become a teacher, but all the material that I found online was directed towards masters of education programs, not, ed tech possibilities. So we're trying to, formulate that narrative and put it out there for, to attract some professionals looking for a change of career.
Good. Yeah, very good. That's
And
good-
we have
good
had some
idea.
people who really good ed techs in this district now that are doing, are ed techs in our district because that's their end goal, and they know we have a pathway to that for them. And we have 3 teachers this year that were ed techs last year and who are all doing amazing jobs, but we're part of that. We have an ed tech to teacher, a special ed teacher program. They were all part of that program and are doing really great work this year. And I think we have 4 or
Okay.
5 in the cohort this year.
Okay.
Janet, do you see like substitute teachers ever become ed techs? Moving towards that.
We have
as a
seen that.
position?
We've seen substitute teachers become ed techs, but we've also seen ed techs become substitute teachers. Tutors, we're very short on tutors, so but sometimes we will have a really good tutor who will decide to become an ed tech. So that's another thing that we'll sometimes see. I think one of the markets that we could try to access are parents. We have a lot, having the ed tech schedule can be a really good parent schedule. So, and I think we have some really talented parents out there. I wouldn't recommend having them be ed techs necessarily in their child's class or program, but I think we definitely have some parents out there that might be great for this and just have no idea that's even a possibility.
For our category of students under emotional disturbance, I'm assuming it's mostly anxiety and anger that we're talking about. And I'm assuming, of course, it's hard to get them psychotherapeutic services that would benefit them based on the lack of professionals in the community. Is that true?
Yes, but I do think that we see buildings and principals that are reaching out to the community and bringing people in and providing space for them to work with our students, which has been really, really
Good.
helpful. And then we bring
Good.
it as part of the student's IEP.
Okay.
Team. I think finding outside services right now for anybody is really tricky.
Yep, it sure is. Okay.
Yeah, Janet and I are also going to be meeting prior to the finalized budget being proposed to talk about supplies that we have for specifically the behavior and life skills programs. There are some expensive lifts and beds and, turning tables that we don't currently have that we're looking at some quotes that we're going to try to include in the FY24 budget. So the overall number might go up, 50K, 70K from what you guys are seeing based off of the spreadsheet that I sent.
Okay. Okay.
Speaking of that, did everybody get a chance to review the spreadsheet that I had sent out that shows the percentage increases and where we're currently standing with the status quo budget?
I have not. Was that in your very last email?
I think I sent it yesterday afternoon.
Yeah. You're talking about articles 2 and 3 spreadsheet?
Yeah, 2 and 3, 3/28/23 was
Yep.
the date.
Okay. Yeah.
And as I mentioned, all of the unfilled positions that Janet shared on her presentation are included in this budget. So we are still looking to hire for all of them. There are a few outliers showing about 300% increase, but those are just personnel changes that are, directly pulled from our payroll module. There isn't much other than the contingency line that I had spoken about. And I believe that is Excel line 231, currently budgeted at 12.5. I'm going to increase to 100K.
Okay.
I think you all did an incredible job with, when I was looking at the percentages, I was like, oh, some of these are really high, but then I saw how you reallocated. And so within the certain, classes that they're all about 100% or 90% or lower. So you did a really good job of maintaining that status quo based on all the need that is there. So it's pretty remarkable that you were able to. Thank you for the incredible amount of work that I know goes
Yeah.
into this.
Agreed. Very much agreed. Okay.
We can come back to Article 2. Article 3 is pretty much mainly Midcoast School of Technology rate increases. So you'll see that is going up 180%. And that is specifically speaking with Sherry Moody, the business manager over there, just salary, payroll, and energy costs that they're budgeting. There is no real rate hike for them. They're 5 towns seeing it. RSU 40 is seeing the same increase. It's just overall cost increases for them.
Max,
And a
I do
large-
apologize. I'm reading, if I'm reading it correctly, we're talking about 116,000. Is that all that relates to Midcoast School of
Yeah.
Technology? That's
Mhm.
the total cost to us how it must come through to us.
Allocated to Article 3. There may be
Ah.
other invoices. I'd have to do a little bit more research for you, Paul, on the actual amount that we send them.
Hmm.
I don't have ADS up right now, but that's all that is contributing to Article 3. Yes.
Wow.
Does it include the debt, Max, in the Article 3, or is that a different article?
It's a different article. Debt is Article 11, I believe.
So
I
where do
mean,
they get-
I mean CTE debt, the debt we're paying on that debt for the new building. Is that in a different article, or it's in this
Yes.
article?
Yeah,
number 3?
that's in Article 11 in debt. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, Paul, that's a significant cost that all 19 towns are sharing
Mhm, mhm.
to have built, the building. So that's also be in a different place. But also, like basically half of MCST comes from the state subsidy.
Yep.
And the other half is paid by the sending districts, which are ours on the mainland and then on the islands. But the 3 biggest ones are ours in Waldoboro and Camden.
Well, I mean, we're sending many children there, right? Or many students
Yeah.
there for $116,000.
Yeah.
Let's keep
Yeah.
sending them.
Oh, yeah.
Is that
we
is
do.
that per student? Do we pay like a per student, and is that how the rate is calculated?
Yeah, depending on the programming that they're in. So, graphic design and auto tech may have different rates. I believe they're, depending on the number of programs they're enrolled in, that's how it's paid out. So, graphic design and auto tech probably have the same tuition, but some students may be, enrolled in 2 programs as compared to 1 for other students.
I must be missing something. Is some of the funds that would otherwise be coming to us whilst they're in school instead goes directly to MCST? So this is an allocation in addition to that?
We receive the funds for the pupils in our district, and we pay a tuition to MCST based off of enrollment.
Okay.
But MCST gets a subsidy also
Mm-hmm.
based on enrollment, I think, right, Max?
Yes, they do.
But I mean, if the average cost of a student's 20-something thousand, 118,000 covers, what, 5-6 students? Something's wrong there. Not complaining.
Well,
I keep sending them.
yeah,
Yeah,
they're
I
in
mean,
our
I guess
school
the question
too.
is, how many students are going from in the RSU district?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not full-time students at MCST. Most of our students are going for one program or another or bus
Okay,
from
right.
OHS. So they're
Thank
not,
you. Gotcha.
And they're
Ignorant,
like
sorry.
83 students, I think, something like that is stuck in my head.
I don't have that number for you right now. As we get into that meeting on that article, I'll have more time to dedicate to research before the call. But I didn't pull it up before tonight. So
It's 80 something. I can't give you an exact number, but it's 80 something.
Yeah, I think it's 83 because I'm on that board and they talked about it last week and I don't have an email, but I'm trying to remember that number. Yeah. And like we might be sending the highest number of students there. But again, all three of the major districts on the mainland are sending big numbers. It is obviously, understandably, a very popular school to go to for lots of reasons, including the new facilities. Yeah.
I do believe I just got that breakdown the other day from Sherry as well. Let me just see
Okay.
if I have it at my fingertips here. Yeah, she sent me her assessment warrants. Well, I can, come on. Well, I gotta minimize something real quick. Yeah, so Sherry just provided this to me the other day. I'll share it with you guys. So we have about 26% of their overall percent. And I'll share this with you, Paul. I can send it to you after this call.
That's great. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Max or Janet or John about Article 2? I don't think that we have any about Article 3, but you're welcome to share more on that too. But really, Article 2 is, I think, the one most attention.
I'm good, but I would like to ask Paul, John, and Max to hang on a little bit afterwards to talk about a facilities thing, just for a few minutes.
Sure.
I'm good otherwise.
If we're good on 2 and 3, I have an update on Article 1 I'd like to share with the committee. I'm going back through the numbers. Next year at Thomaston Grammar School, the 5th grade class is 27 students. And I'd like to split that class and hire another 5th grade teacher. That is the garden program class, and 27 students is just too much for one teacher program. Now, it may be budget neutral, depending on whether or not we have to hire another kindergarten teacher. Right now, we have a retirement and one kindergarten teacher. And if we stay at one kindergarten, it would be pretty much budget neutral, but I wanted to bring that to the board's, the committee's attention. And I would have to ask the board for approval of that because it's a new position.
Okay.
Questions on that?
Okay.
And then I've got a little bit of good news for you. But you can't really ask me too many questions about it because I haven't really had time to analyze it. But late breaking news, I got an email from my friends at the DOE, and apparently they made a mistake in the 279s, the ED 279s of all the school systems, and they oversampled the data. And when they recalculated it, the mill rate dropped from 7.29 to 6.97, which means that we get an additional $589,376 in revenue.
Holy cow.
Wow.
That's a good change.
I'm
Oh.
Wow.
assuming that only went out to superintendents because I didn't see that
No, you
today.
didn't get it, but because we're in a budget meeting, I'm passing that along. I don't want to be thought of as withholding information. It'll come out, I think, tomorrow, but
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I was shocked. I said,
Wow.
what is, they said changes in ED 279. So while you all were listening to Janet, I was feverishly looking through to see what it meant. Because
With your
usually,
heart in your throat, right? Because you didn't know if
Well,
it was
Yes,
up
it
or
could have
down.
gone either way.
Could've gone either
when
way.
you get those- usually when you get those, it's not good news.
Right.
In this case, it is. So that's good.
Wow.
And we'll analyze it and let you know what that might mean, but it can only be good news.
Excellent.
Wow. Yeah, that's huge.
Wow.
I mean,
Ultra huge.
I guess I'll add on to the good news pile is we also received notification that the maximum rate increase on insurance premiums is going to be 6%, but they're going to allocate by district. So I won't
Wow.
know until early April.
Okay.
Good.
That means your what you looked at before will go down or it might go down.
Our
Correct.
8% increase will go down to a max, worst case scenario, 6%. So
Okay. Good. Wow.
All
That
right,
is good news too.
Mark, you got anything?
I wish.
Any other money savings? Wow. Well, that is quite the way to end a budget meeting. Thank you, John.
Yes,
and
it
Max.
is.
Those are both great updates to know. Okay. Anything else from anyone? Questions on this new information or questions on Article 2? or
no,
3?
I just want to, give kudos to Janet. She does an amazing job, is always looking for efficiencies and has been a great partner holding my hand this year, just sort of learning the ins and outs of special ed. So really appreciate you hopping on, Janet, and you explained it far better than I could have. So very, very appreciative.
The queen
Yeah,
of
great presentation to do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you
Let us know
for
how we can help.
rearranging the meeting so we could hear from Janet directly. Definitely helpful.
Right.
Thank you,
Sarah,
Janet.
did you? Oh, sorry.
I was just saying, yeah, let us know if there's ways we can help as a board and, not just the budget committee, but as a board, within the article and other ways.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I will say it's been nice to have Max downstairs to be able to pop in and share my little surprises with him. So
I've memorized everybody's footsteps, and Janet, I usually
Ah.
hide under my desk when I hear her.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, especially as it comes to hiring folks as you're retooling job descriptions or the marketing that you're doing for those. I know we should be looking more on the RSU website for these things, but as you post positions, be sure to send those out to the board, and we can certainly forward them to folks we know, with an extra added personalized plug, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, especially, Lauren for our psychologist positions and our guidance counselor positions, any leverage you can get within the community of therapists would be helpful. So
Yep. Okay.
So we'll try to pay attention to those. But if we get an extra nudge, we promise to try to make it worth your while with the extra step of reaching out to us individually.
Good point.
Okay.
Good point. Thank you.
All
All right. So again,
so-
for Max, John, and Paula, hang on. That'd be great. Thank you.
yep, I'm gonna stop recording. Thanks, everybody. It was a good,
Thank you.
helpful meeting.
have a nice night.
Bye.
Yeah. Have a good night.